It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The Conservative wipeout and the huge Labour majority being predicted by a major new poll. And that's before the Nigel Farage effect. Today, he confirmed he's standing as an MP and will lead the Reform Party. Also tonight, the family of motor neurone disease campaigner Rob Burrow break ground on a new treatment centre the day after his death.
People say things happen for a reason. If the reason's a cure, bless you, Rob.
In India, dozens of election officials die of suspected heat stroke as temperatures top 50 degrees Celsius. And countdown to the Euros. England beat Bosnia in their warm-up match, while Scotland are also back on the winning trail. Hello there, good evening. It is often said the only poll that matters is the general election itself. And tonight we begin with huge election challenge facing Rishi Sunak, one which has become that bit tougher. A new poll from Sky's election campaign partner, YouGov, has predicted a huge and historic majority for Labour of 194 seats. That is the biggest Labour majority for 100 years. And that was before Nigel Farage today made clear that he is planning what he called a revolt, taking over as leader of the right-wing Reform Party and standing as an MP in Essex. We'll have details of that polling in a moment, but first here's Sky's political correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, on the U-turn, which could have serious political consequences.
The Tories want this man out of here. But Nigel Farage, who insisted last week he would not be standing in this general election, is back.
So I am going to stand in this election. I'll be launching my candidacy at midday tomorrow in the Essex seaside town of Clacton.
He's sticking it to the political class.
Have you never changed your mind about anything? Answer the question. I mean, what are you suggesting? No, it's a very silly question. Sorry, I almost nodded off then. I really do apologise.
Nigel Farage is plotting what he calls a revolt to reshape the future of right-wing politics in the UK. Splitting the Tory vote is one thing, but to really shake things up, the party needs to win seats.
Richard Tice mentioned just now that the polls aren't moving. I guess that also reflects your performance so far. Is this decision in part a reflection of the fact that you don't think the campaign has got off to the start that you were hoping? And do you think that you're bigger than this party?
None of you believe it's possible, just you watch. I think what we've done today will inject some energy and some optimism into the campaign.
Sky's exclusive YouGov poll shows Reform ending this general election with no seats at all. But the Farage factor could change things.
As your poll that's just come out shows, the election's over already. It's over. It's done. It's not my fault that the Tories have done it to themselves. That now gives people freedom, both Labour and Tory voters, to vote for what they really believe in. And that's why in a week's time, when you come and see me, our poll rating will be a lot higher.
And it's this man who is making way after putting in more than £1 million of his own money to fund the party.
I thought, we can do better than this. We can go from 5th gear through to 6th gear. This is a fossil-fueled car, by the way. To 7th gear, but what about 8th gear? What about turning on, how do we turn on the turbo boosters, the rocket chargers to this campaign?
Richard Tice doesn't have the pulling power of Nigel Farage. That much is abundantly clear. Some Tory MPs tonight are calling Farage's move an existential threat to their party. But the Prime Minister is putting a brave face on it all.
At the end of the day, there's only two people that are going to be Prime Minister on July 5th, Keir Starmer or me. So on the issues that you care about, if that's tackling migration, cutting taxes, a sensible approach to net zero, I'm going to deliver that for you, not Keir Starmer.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the campaign trail.
But this goes beyond polling day. Sunak's party could be in for a turbulent ride if Nigel Farage enters the Westminster jungle. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
And here is a list of the candidates declared so far in the Clacton constituency, one we'll be watching, of course, on election night. Well, a Conservative wipeout, a Liberal Democrat resurgence and a resounding Labour majority. This latest polling isn't definitive. It is a snapshot of what 60,000 voters thought at the end of last month. But it will be hugely concerning for the government. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, can take us through the findings.
This is the first projection of the general election race by YouGov, who Sky News are partnering up with for the election. Let's look at what they say the result they think at the moment looks like it'll be. Labour winning the election with a majority of 194 seats. That's bigger than Tony Blair's 1997 majority. That's bigger than Margaret Thatcher in 1983. It's the biggest majority for 100 years. That would make Keir Starmer one of the most successful political leaders in 100 years. Let's look at the results. OK, under this projection, you have the Labour Party on 422 seats. That figure is bigger than any in history, and that's at the expense of the Tories, down worse than most MPs on the Tory side that I know, 140 seats. You look at Reform over there, today, as of today, led by this man, they don't look like they're getting anything, but a rout in Scotland for the SNP. They're down to 17 seats. Over here, we've got the Liberal Democrat, a very good result for them, quadrupling their seats on 48 and the Greens on 2. So let's look at some of the key faces and what happens to them in this race. Look at these faces because you might not be seeing them for much longer. Some of the biggest names in politics, the Chancellor losing to the Lib Dems. You've got Penny Mordaunt losing to Labour. Johnny Mercer over there losing to Labour as well. But look at this man, Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary. He's down 18 points to Labour. Let's hear from him.
I always accept that my seat is at risk. I've always thought of it as being marginal. I always fight for every single vote. The second thing I'd say is it's all really interesting seeing large polls. It was actually an actual vote in my constituency within the last month. And in that, had that been a general election, I most likely would have won that vote.
A brave face, but this projection shows his party collapsing. Like here in Grimsby in the northeast, a bellwether seat Sky is following all year. It turned Tory blue in 2019, but would be comfortably won by the Labour Party.
Let's look at the headlines from this extraordinary MRP poll for YouGov. The biggest majority for Labour in 100 years. Labour on 422 seats to the Tories 140. Conservatives at their lowest level since 1906. High-profile defeats. Jeremy Hunt, Grant Shapps, Penny Mordaunt and Jacob Rees-Mogg. It looks as if July the 4th will be a defining day in our politics.
Sam Coates there. So 12 cabinet ministers could potentially lose their seats. And as you saw in Sam's report, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, could be among them. The constituency of Godalming and Ash has been reshaped by boundary changes. Tamara Cohen has been asking voters there if they are switching their votes and why.
In the Conservative heartlands, could voters be about to turn on them like never before? This is the affluent Surrey constituency being fought by the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, but where families are feeling the squeeze with mortgages, childcare and energy bills. Switchers were not hard to find.
I'll be voting differently to how I have previously, but yeah, probably different things on our agenda for voting than previously with a young family.
So you're saying you used to vote Conservatives and now you're thinking might switch to the Lib Dems?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's made you make that switch?
Bennett and Tories have done a particularly good job the last few years in my mind, even though my actual political stance would probably be more with them.
I'll probably be switching just because it would probably be better for our family.
As voters prepare to choose, polling projections by YouGov for Sky News show Labour will win the biggest majority in 100 years, and the Conservatives, who always win here, struggling to find a sweet spot.
I'm still thinking about lockdown and a friend who couldn't be visited in hospital and died whilst they were partying.
Mortgage rates came up again and again.
I'm on maternity leave right now with a young newborn, and we essentially are living off savings to pay a huge mortgage and nursery fees. We've had to drop nursery in order to afford, well, we can't afford the nursery basically.
Mr Hunt has an 8,000 majority over the Lib Dems. But what about the older voters the Conservatives have been courting?
Where's all this money, all these tax cuts, where is the money going to come to pay for anything? Everybody's cutting everybody back. Local government, cut right back.
Yeah.
Where it's going to end.
So you think they're not telling us the truth about these tax cuts?
Well, they're living in cloud cuckoo land, aren't they, really?
Quite honestly, I think the Labour would be leaning towards the left, like Diane Abbott. Last week she was out, this week she's back in again. Are they giving way to the left? And the left always worries me about the Labour Party if they get in there. I'm sure the unions, I mean, I was a union member for years, but I still wouldn't trust the unions anyway, really.
At cricket practice, some were already anticipating a big upset for their MP.
It'd be the Portillo moment for him, won't it? So, yeah, good riddance.
In areas like this, which have never deserted the Conservatives, this poll suggests that swathes of true blue seats are now in play. There's a pincer movement, with the Lib Dems recovering in the south of England, Labour on the march, and smaller parties in the game too.
There's a month to go, and could be many twists and turns in this election, but one team currently looking very far in the lead. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Godalming.
And here is a list of the candidates declared so far in the Godalming and Ash constituency, with the official list set to be published on Friday. Well, let's speak now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, Farage then polling. How deep will Tory concerns be tonight, and what can they do?
Well, Anna, night after night, the Conservative operation has been hoping that the political kaleidoscope is shaken and things fall in their favour. But the bad news keeps on coming, and it feels like today has been something of a body blow for Rishi Sunak. Take the YouGov polling projection that we've been reporting. It seems like the Prime Minister has called an election at a moment of his own choosing that will result in the highest number of seats ever for his opponent in any election, if this projection turns out to be true on July the 4th. Then there's Nigel Farage, tormentor-in-chief of the Conservative Party for decades. He has returned to the front line, and I have to say, Anna, I think that him being more front and centre of this campaign cannot in any way be a good thing for the Conservatives. So I've asked Conservative headquarters what their response is to everything that's happened today, and they tell me this doesn't change their strategy. We roll on, is what they say. Now, tomorrow, there are TV debates. They are actually, as it happens, the exact format that Conservative headquarters, the campaign chiefs, want to see, a head-to-head between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. Might that change things, shake the political kaleidoscope? It might, but it might not. And if it still doesn't in a few days, where is the Tory party left then?
Sam Coates, live for us there in Westminster. Thank you. Simply the best. That is how the wife of former rugby league player Rob Burrow described him today, as building work began on a specialist centre for patients with motor neurone disease. But that's only one part of his legacy, as others with the diagnosis have been describing how he rewrote the rules for people living with the condition. Fraser Maud has been speaking to Rob's family and those he inspired.
3, 2, 1...
Less than 24 hours after the announcement of his death, the next chapter in the Rob Burrow legacy began. The bravery of the Burrow family exemplified by Rob's mother, father and sisters, all attending the groundbreaking ceremony for the Centre for Motor Neurone Disease, which will bear Rob's name.
We spoke to Rob and was like, do you want to go ahead today? And it was an absolute yes. That's what Rob would have wanted.
I've never seen so much love. I knew we were loved, but not.
It's all right, it's all right. That's helped carry us through.
Not as much. With everything on TV and everything,
It's amazing, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And he deserved it, bless him, didn't he? And it was never about Rob. We've all said that, and we're from day one.
Yeah.
I know it's been on television a lot, and me and Jeff used to worry and think, people will be sick of hearing about this. But it was never about him. It was about finding a cure.
It means everything more than words can say, because people say things happen for a reason. If the reason's a cure, bless you, Rob.
Here too, Kevin Sinfield, Rob's best friend and the man whose Herculean efforts have helped raise millions of pounds to make his friend's dream a reality.
We wanted people to have hope. We wanted to find a cure for this disease, and building this centre
and the work he's been able to do over the last 4.5 years will ensure that those who come after him, it'll be a far better journey.
Lindsay Burrow, Rob's wife and mother of their 3 young children, said in her first statement since his death that she was proud and fortunate to call Rob her husband. She went on to say, although we knew this day would arrive, I'm somehow still feeling at a loss for words that our loving, kind and caring husband and father has departed. However, she says, we take comfort from how much people's love and continued support meant to Rob through his most vulnerable times. He was simply the best, our hero. Ian Flatt was diagnosed with MND just a few weeks before Rob. He's also a fundraiser and awareness campaigner for the disease, which has no cure.
He's just passed the baton on to all of us to finish what he started and build something that he can be proud of and that's worthy of his name.
5 miles away at Headingley Stadium, Rob's family came to see the tributes to their son and brother, and to meet the Rhinos players and staff who wanted to pay their respects.
He was just so bubbly, and there were never a dull moment when you were in and around him. He always seemed like he was up to something, trying to prank somebody or taking the mick out of somebody. So yeah, he was just full of positive energy and an all-round amazing person.
All day, the steady flow of fans and tributes continued. Today has been emotional for so many reasons. The sadness brought by Rob Burrow's death, the pride of a family and community of fans, and the positivity for a future that this small-framed giant of a man has helped shape. Fraser Maud, Sky News, Leeds.
Israel says 4 more hostages are confirmed to have died in captivity in Gaza, including a British-Israeli citizen. An Israeli army spokesman said 51-year-old Nadav Popelwell and 3 other elderly Israeli men were killed a few months ago during the battle for Khan Yunis between Israeli forces and Hamas. The Israeli army says their deaths have been confirmed after assessing new intelligence. President Biden has released a statement saying he has boundless love, confidence and respect for his son as Hunter Biden's trial gets underway in Delaware. He's accused of lying about his drug use on application forms when he purchased a handgun in 2018, allegations he denies. The First Lady, Jill Biden, was in court to support her stepson. It has been the warmest May on record for the UK, despite some areas suffering heavy rainfall and flooding. The mean temperature was 13.1 degrees Celsius and takes into account the exceptionally warm days and nights in Scotland. Meteorologists say it was also the UK's warmest spring on record, with mean temperatures of 9.37 degrees Celsius. Well, to India now, which is battling a deadly heat wave with temperatures at times topping 50 degrees Celsius. Records have been broken in Delhi and at least 200 people have died, including 33 election officials who died in a single day while overseeing the country's general election. As the votes are counted, forecasters say the sweltering weather will persist, as Neville Lazarus reports.
They wait for hours in the scorching heat for water. And then a scramble to get their pipes in, a desperate effort to get every precious drop. This is all the families will get in a day for drinking, cooking and washing. There is no running water in scores of homes nestled around the affluent diplomatic enclave of the national capital. And at this cluster, it has been going on for years.
We've been standing in line since the early morning, hungry and thirsty for water. There are a lot of problems. Those with babies have to wait here with them too.
There are some days this lifeline does not show up, and buying water is not an option for many. Families complain of the quality of the water.
We once found a rat and a slipper inside the tanker. This water is unfit to drink.
Sometimes the water is dirty and smells, but we're helpless as there's no other source.
India is reeling under a severe heat wave and there are still many weeks to go. Schools have been closed early in anticipation. Water is scarce and the electricity grid is overwhelmed, with power shortages making life even more difficult in the searing heat.
Temperatures are reaching record levels, about 47 degrees here in Delhi. That's more than 116 degrees Fahrenheit. Earlier, there were short spells of the heat wave, but now we are witnessing prolonged periods of intense heat.
As a result, reservoirs and water channels are drying up, having a devastating effect on farming, with production of food and cash crops falling drastically. For many, working under this blistering sun is the only option to livelihood. For a day's work at this site, Anil gets £5. It's extremely hot, but for us labourers, there's no option. We have to earn a living for our children and families. India is in the midst of a general election, and the government is yet to come up with a heat action plan to bring any relief for its citizens. Neville Lazarus, Sky News, Delhi.
The first female president in North America was elected today in a country plagued by machismo. Claudia Sheinbaum is the former mayor of Mexico City and an award-winning climate scientist who has pledged to continue the work of her predecessor, who lifted millions of Mexicans out of poverty and doubled the minimum wage. But she faces significant challenges after a bloody campaign which saw 37 candidates assassinated. Drug cartel violence is at a historic high and is still pushing thousands of citizens to flee the country for the United States. She'll also have to tackle extreme levels of femicide. Nearly 2,500 women were reported missing in 2022. The real number could be even higher. Sky's chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, reports now from Chihuahua in Mexico.
As the first election returns indicated a huge win for Claudia Sheinbaum, a massive celebration began in Mexico City's Zocalo Square. The first female president in the country's history. Many thought it could never happen in Mexico. The president-elect fully aware of the significance of her victory.
Es el reconocimiento del pueblo de México.
It is the recognition of the people of Mexico to our national project.
Agradezco también.
I'm also grateful because for the first time in 200 years of the Republic, I will become the first woman president of Mexico.
Me convertiré en la primera mujer presidenta de México.
Her party's social reforms, crucially pensions for the poorest, was the game changer. Policies, she says, that will continue. Across the country, electoral lawyers like Susana Mercado pored over the results. This wasn't just a presidential election, it's about control of Congress. For the faithful, it's a new beginning for Mexico.
Having the first female president in North America is very symbolic in a country such as Mexico, because machismo here is something that is very hard to work with, and women in spaces of power really have to struggle to get there. So I am a big fan of the president right now. And we cannot just be very happy because people went out and voted for a woman in Mexico. It's blowing my mind.
This was Mexico's biggest election, but has been marred by political assassination and violence. In the conservative north, the new president isn't hugely popular. It won't all be plain sailing.
This is such a big win for the new president and her political party. They'll even have the power to change elements of the constitution, which is something they've been wanting to do for a very long time. But there are other big issues she has to address. The power of the cartels is one of them, corruption, and also personal security, the biggest issue for Mexicans in this election. But also she has to think about her relations with the United States of America, particularly over migration and the border fence in the north.
Those problems of security here in Mexico, the migrant issue on the border and relations with the United States as it focuses on its own presidential elections are huge issues the new administration will have to deal with.
Gracias, Mexico!
Right now, though, they're celebrating an historic day. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Northern Mexico.
The Labour leader described it as the age of insecurity. In a bid to convince voters that they can trust him and his party on national security, Keir Starmer put nuclear deterrence at the centre of his plan to protect the UK from the rumble of war. But the man who will likely advise him if he gets into Downing Street has told Sky News that he doesn't believe Putin will start World War III. Admiral Sir Tony Radakin spoke to our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, as Europe prepares to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings.
150,000 soldiers in one day, 7,000 ships, over 1,000 warships, 2,000 aircraft.
Britain's defence chief recalls the heroics of D-Day on the 6th of June 1944. Frozen in time on a giant map at Southwark House in Hampshire, where a lot of the planning was done.
If called upon today, would the nation respond in the same way as they did back in, 80 years ago?
Absolutely. I think our nation has got that pride, that commitment.
He drew similarities between Allied action against the Nazis in World War II and how nations today are rallying together to help Ukraine counter Russia's invasion.
It's a war of economies, it's a war of logistics, it's a war of industrial production, it's a war of political will, it's all of those things for the simplicity of bringing peace back to the people of Ukraine.
How confident are you that Ukraine will endure and will succeed?
I'm hugely confident. By the end of June, Russia will have lost 500,000 people killed and wounded. We are already past 800 days for a war that Putin anticipated to be 3 days long. And this is tough for Ukraine, but we have to maintain our support.
With an election underway, the military chief wouldn't be drawn on UK defence matters. But he did talk about the significance of this moment, when Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel that were intercepted with help from the US, the UK and others.
I don't think our potential adversaries would have been able to respond in the way that you saw on the evening of April the 13th.
So you don't think Beijing or Moscow could have done that?
I think the US leadership and the proficiency that we have with our allies is at a level above our potential foes.
As Britain and its allies prepare to remember D-Day, the Admiral says he doesn't think another world war is imminent, despite hostility, in particular from Vladimir Putin's Russia.
Putin does not want a war with NATO. Putin does not want a nuclear war. And we have enormous overmatch because of the strength of NATO.
Yet, with Ukraine still a war zone, the risk of wider conflict returning to Europe surely remains. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
11 days to go to the Euros, and England tonight beat Bosnia-Herzegovina 3-0 in their warm-up match in Newcastle. Cole Palmer took the penalty to give England the lead, with regular taker Harry Kane still on the bench. Trent Alexander-Arnold also marked his first international appearance since November with a goal, and a third goal sent the St James Park crowd home happy. England face Iceland in their final warm-up match on Friday. Meanwhile, Scotland won their warm-up match against Gibraltar in a game being played in the Algarve. The first goal against the side, ranked 203 in the world, took 58 minutes. Scotland made it 2-0 late on, their first win in 8 games. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by Theo Usherwood, political journalist and broadcaster, and Pippa Crerar, political editor of The Guardian. And certainly among the stories we will be discussing this on the front of The Guardian. Its headline, Tory alarm as Farage takes control of Reform UK. Plenty of coverage on that, as you might imagine. Back in a moment.